Welcome. I'd really appreciate if you could drop a comment with your thoughts and reactions as you listen. Your feedback helps me craft better stories for you. My name, Dr. Elara Morgenstern, was known in a few select academic circles, a one whose life revolved around celestial bodies and their secrets. That night, the cosmos offered more than just a view of the infinite. It brought a harbinger of chaos straight to my door. It was past midnight when the sensors started to behave erratically. I should have been alone, the only heartbeat in the cold, calculated embrace of technology and stardust. But the air changed, tingling with electricity, as if the observatory itself sensed an intruder. He stood in the shadow of the great telescope, a silhouette that seemed to absorb the sparse light. "Dr. Morgenstern," he said, voice eerily calm. "We need to talk." Fear ticked in me, but curiosity was my cardinal sin. "Who are you?" I demanded. He stepped forward, features coming into view. Dark hair, pale skin, and eyes that held the weight of eons. "My name is Cyrus," he said, "and I come from a future that cannot be allowed to pass." The tale he spun was fantastical. A world ruled by vampires, where humanity didn't gaze at the stars in wonder. They hid from the night in terror. Cyrus claimed he had traveled back to stop the emergence of his kind, to change a history written in blood. I should have laughed, should have called security. But there was something about him, the earnestness in his voice, the way he held himself, like a man carrying an unimaginable burden. "Why me?" I asked, my rational mind grappling with the insanity of it all. "Because," he answered, pulling out a device that looked like it was cobbled together from a mad scientist's dream, "you discover the key to it all." He laid out his evidence, a series of calculations that danced too close to my own unpublished research on temporal anomalies. If he were a charlatan, he was one with access to my mind's deepest recesses. Cyrus needed someone with my expertise to identify where and when the first vampire would rise, a chance to nip the bud before it bloomed into a nightmarish future. His gaze held mine, unblinking, unyielding. I weighed my options, the scales tipped by my scientific curiosity against the overwhelming absurdity of time travel and vampires. But then, isn't discovery born from the seeds of the absurd? "All right, Cyrus," I breathed out, "I'll help you." His smile was a thing of reluctant gratitude, and the observatory's silence was once again filled only with the hum of machines and the whisper of distant suns. The night had brought an anomaly, indeed. A stranger with a story so dark and chilling, it clawed at the edges of the world I knew. And I, Dr. Elara Morgenstern, had just agreed to step into that shadow with him. The days blurred into a singular thread, spinning a tapestry of ancient texts and forbidden lore as Cyrus and I delved into the heart of vampiric myths. My observatory, once a sanctuary of scientific pursuit, transformed into a cryptic library teeming with dusty tomes and arcane scrolls. Cyrus, ever the enigmatic guide, maneuvered through the labyrinth of history with a familiarity that tinged my spine with unease. His fingertips brushed over aged leather and faded parchment, a dance of reluctance and reverence. "We're close," he murmured, his voice a mixture of excitement and something darker that I couldn't place. We had traced the lineage of blood and shadow back to a crypt beneath the city, a place where the bones of the past lay undisturbed. The crypt was a gaping maw in the earth, steps leading down into a silence that felt like a held breath. Cyrus hesitated at the entrance, a flicker of aversion crossing his usually impassive face. My breath caught at the sight. Why would a man unflinching in the face of such grim stories show fear now? "Are you all right?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, conscious of the sacred hush of the place. He nodded, steeling himself, and we descended. Inside, the air was thick with the musk of decay and old stone. Shadows clung to the walls, crafted by the weak light of our flashlights. We wandered through aisles of tombs, each carved with the visage of those long dead, until we came upon a sarcophagus unlike any other. It was adorned with a tapestry of nightmarish beauty, angels and demons entwined in an eternal dance of death. "This is it," Cyrus said, a certainty in his voice that chilled my blood. We pored over the sarcophagus, our hands tracing the cold, intricate carvings. There was a brutality to the images, a tale of a being rising from the depths, cloaked in the power of the night. This was the origin, the birthplace of the curse we sought to contain. Cyrus's hand hovered over a particular sigil, a depiction of a creature with eyes that seemed to bleed sorrow. His expression was one of abhorrence, a sentiment that echoed in the hollow of my own chest. "This being," he nodded, his face pale, "the first and the most ferocious. If we can prevent its rise, we can change everything." But as I watched him, I noticed the subtle discrepancies. A bead of sweat on his brow, the way his fingers shook just so slightly. It was as if he knew more of this being than he let on. Each discovery, every revelation brought with it a growing dread. I was no stranger to the terrors of the universe, the destructive might of black holes, the violent deaths of stars. Yet this ancient evil, bound by flesh and blood, felt far more personal, far more menacing. I pushed aside the disquiet in my soul, focusing on the symbols that detailed a ritual, a sealing it seemed, to bind the beast to its tomb. It was a sliver of hope, but even that flickered like a candle in the wind, threatened by the looming shadows of tomorrow. The crypt whispered secrets, the dead murmuring tales of a time when darkness ruled unchallenged. And as Cyrus and I emerged into the failing light of day, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were but pawns in a game that spanned centuries. The shadows were lengthening, reaching for us with grasping fingers, and somewhere in the back of my mind, a thought took root. To fight the darkness, one must know it intimately. How well, I wondered, did Cyrus know this shadow? Nightfall enveloped the world as Cyrus and I stood within the heart of the forest, where the earth still bore the scars of ancient rites. Under the gaze of the moon, a spectral witness, we laid out the elements of the ritual. Salt from the Dead Sea, ash from a tree struck by lightning, and the blood of a willing participant, my own. The cut on my palm stung as drops of blood fell, merging with the earth in a crimson pact. Cyrus's hands were steady as he drew the symbols around us, a protective barrier according to the grimoire that now lay open beside us. I couldn't help but notice the way his fingers trembled ever so slightly with each line he traced. The air grew thick, charged with an energy that raised the fine hairs on my neck. I felt the world holding its breath, waiting for a shift that might seal its fate. The ritual was the fulcrum upon which futures balanced, and as we chanted the incantations, I could sense the threads of time tensing, coiling around us. The forest responded to our call. Owls hooted in discordant harmony, and the wind moaned through the trees like the choir of the damned. The very fabric of the night seemed to warp and weft around us, shadows dancing just beyond the firelight. Then, pain lanced through my body as the ground beneath us quaked. I stumbled, my hand slipping from Cyrus's grasp, and a shard of rock burst forth, slicing through my leg like a cruel afterthought of the earth's upheaval. Blood, darker than before, poured freely, painting the symbols in a hue that seemed almost alive. Cyrus was at my side in an instant, his face etched with concern. The ritual was forgotten as he tore a piece of his shirt, pressing it against the wound in a futile attempt to stem the tide of red. "Stay with me, Elara," he urged, his voice a low command that I clung to as consciousness threatened to ebb away. It was then, in that haze of pain and fear, that I saw it. The briefest flicker of something in his eyes that wasn't concern. Was it satisfaction, triumph, or perhaps the shadows were playing tricks on my mind? He helped me to my feet, his arm a band of steel around my waist. As we limped away from the now quiet grove, I looked back at the ritual site. The symbols seemed to mock me, their meanings as enigmatic as the man who now supported me. Doubt wormed its way through my thoughts, a seed planted in the fertile ground of our shared experiences. Each memory of Cyrus's odd behavior, each instance of his obscure knowledge, took root in the darkness of my mind. Why did he hesitate at the crypt? Why did he know just how to draw those arcane symbols? Questions multiplied like a nest of vipers, their venom seeping into the trust I had placed in him. Back at the observatory, I lay recuperating, my leg stitched and bandaged, but it was my trust that felt frayed and torn. Cyrus watched over me, a silent guardian, but as sleep drew me under, I couldn't shake the feeling of being prey. "The birth of night," I murmured, the words slipping from my lips as I succumbed to slumber. "The dawn of our reality," came Cyrus's whisper, too low for a dreaming mind to comprehend its weight. When morning came, the ritual site was undisturbed, but the air felt different. Thicker, as if it now carried a burden, and somewhere in the depths of the earth, something ancient had stirred, its hunger piqued by the taste of fresh blood. Chapter 3 intensifies the creeping dread and suspicion surrounding Cyrus, while detailing the brutal ritual that inadvertently edges them closer to the birth of vampires. The realistic tone is maintained with the depiction of Elara's injury and her growing doubt, leaving the reader to anticipate the upcoming betrayal. The observatory, once my sanctuary of stars and solace, had become a crypt of lies. My leg throbbed with a dull ache, a physical echo of the deep-seated treachery that had taken root. I pored over the grimoire once more, the arcane text amazed that I had traversed in blindness, led by Cyrus, the man I had trusted. It was an anomaly within the texts that ensnared my attention, a passage that had appeared inert, a footnote that we had dismissed. But beneath the black light I used for examining celestial charts, hidden ink blossomed across the parchment, a confession of the ritual's true purpose. Its author none other than the time traveler himself. The revelation struck like ice through my veins. The ritual didn't prevent the birth of vampires. It precipitated it. And Cyrus, with all his charm and desperate pleas, was the progenitor, the first of his kind. I reeled, the room spinning, as the fragments of truth assembled into a horrifying image. His aversion to the relics, the subtle satisfaction at my injury during the ritual, the whispered words when he thought I slumbered. It all coalesced into a sinister design. My mind raced, logic and emotion warring within me. Cyrus had orchestrated this dance of destiny with meticulous care, and I had been his pawn, the scientist too enthralled by the enigma to see the fangs behind the smile. He found me there, amidst my scattered theories and shattered beliefs. His visage, always so composed, faltered at the sight of accusation in my eyes. "Elara," he began, his voice a melody that now scraped against my ears. "Don't," I cut him off, brandishing the grimoire. "You planned this. The ritual, the preventing of the vampire scourge. It was all a lie." His mask crumbled, the monster beneath laid bare. "Yes," he admitted, the word a knife twisting in my chest. "But you must understand, I had to exist, and you were the key." Rage, fierce and fiery, blazed within me. With a primal scream, I hurled the nearest object, a metallic model of the celestial spheres, at him. It struck with a satisfying thud, and I bolted. The chase was brutal. I dashed through the labyrinth of telescopes and computers, my knowledge of the observatory a lifeline. Behind me, Cyrus gave chase, his footsteps a relentless drumbeat, promising doom. I had to survive, to expose the vampiric plague poised to befall humanity. It was a game of predator and prey, but I refused to be hunted. I reached my office, slamming the door shut and locking it. Cyrus pounded from the other side, a beast enraged by the scent of escape. I scanned the room frantically, my gaze landing on the emergency fire axe encased in glass. With a chair, I shattered the barrier and armed myself with the weapon. The door was giving way, Cyrus's determination manifesting in splintered wood and twisted metal. He burst through, a figure of ancient nightmares, his face contorted in a vicious snarl. I swung the axe with all my might, a blow that would have cleaved any other intruder. But he was no mere man. He caught the handle, his grip unyielding, his strength terrifying. "You can't stop what's already begun," he hissed, his breath a cold gust against my face. I kicked. I clawed, every instinct screaming to survive. And then, an opportunity. He faltered just for an instant, under the barrage, and I wrenched free, slipping past him into the night. I ran with reckless abandon, the observatory receding into the darkness. Cyrus's chilling laughter echoed in my wake, a promise of horror to come. "I am the future, Elara," his voice haunted the wind. "And you, my dear, you have been my genesis." I pushed forward, away from the hallowed halls of science, now desecrated by betrayal. Ahead lay the uncertainty of dawn, the hope of thwarting a future written in blood, my blood. The game had changed, the board reset. I was the scientist, the betrayed, the hunter. The fabric of my reality had been irreparably torn, the threads of trust unraveled by the sting of betrayal. As I fled into the night, the observatory, my former haven of exploration and discovery, stood as a dark silhouette, a monument to the deception that had been fostered within its walls. In the days that followed, the once sleepy town was plagued by a series of chilling disappearances. The night became a realm of fear, whispers of shadowy figures preying upon the vulnerable. My heart ached with the knowledge that I had been instrumental in unleashing this terror upon the world. It was during the funereal dusk that I found them, the hunters, a motley crew of survivors, each one carrying the scars of loss. They welcomed me not with open arms, but with a shared purpose, a burning desire to upend the curse that had befallen our land. We convened in hushed tones, my voice steady as I imparted the cursed knowledge that had been thrust upon me. With every revelation, their eyes hardened, their resolve steeling. The hunters became the embodiment of vengeance, and I, their unlikely oracle, wielding the double-edged sword of science and the occult. Our plan was a tapestry of ancient lore and modern tactics. We tracked the vampires to their lairs, the old crypts now teeming with the undying. We struck under the cloak of twilight, our every move a delicate dance between hunter and prey. The clash was as brutal as it was swift. The hunters, guided by my insights into vampire lore, were a force of retribution. Our weapons were not just silver and wood, but science. UV lights and garlic, infused projectiles, became instruments of destruction. Yet, as the bodies of the fallen vampires smoldered in the night, a hollow victory settled in our chests. With every vampire that turned to ash, the realization dawned upon us that Cyrus, the architect of this nightmare, remained unscathed. His power seemed to swell with the chaos, a dark tide rising with the fall of his brood. The final confrontation was inevitable. As we faced him, the air crackled with the power of his ancient blood. His form was a mirage of darkness, eyes ablaze with a history written in bloodshed. "Cyrus," I called out, my voice a lance aimed at his heart. "This ends now." His laughter was a cacophony of madness, echoing off the crypt walls. "Dear Elara, you cannot end what is eternal. You have merely played your part in the grand cycle." The battle raged, a tempest of fury and desperation. We fought with everything we had, our every strike a note in the symphony of our defiance. But as the dust settled, the grim truth lay bare before us. Cyrus was not to be vanquished this night. We retreated, a ragged band of warriors not defeated, but undeterred. Our numbers were diminished, our spirits weathered by the storm, but our will remained indomitable. As we vanished into the encroaching dawn, leaving behind the smoldering crypts and the echoes of our lost comrades, my voice cut through the silence, a vow that tethered us all to the path we had chosen. "This is not the end," I proclaimed, the horizon bleeding with the first light of day. "We will return, armed with new knowledge, new allies. We will reclaim the night and sever the roots of this darkness. This I swear." And with that, the twilight of humanity stretched before us, not as an insurmountable void, but as a challenge, a gauntlet thrown at the feet of the future, where hope still glimmered like a star defiant against the encroaching dark. The night was a shroud, thick with fog as I pulled my coat tighter against the chill. Transylvania has a way of seeping into your bones, a cold that's as much about the soul as it is the air. They call me Grayson Hawk, but the name is just a shadow I cast in a world infested with much darker things. The Order had sent me, their best hunter, to a village that didn't even merit a dot on most maps, a place drowning under the weight of an ancient terror. The elder vampire, a creature more myth than flesh, had chosen this hamlet as its feeding ground. My boots crunched over the frost-laden ground as I made my way toward the heart of this forsaken place, a village so steeped in dread that even the moon dared not touch it. The innkeeper, a withered husk of a man, spoke in whispers as if afraid the walls might betray him to the night. His words were riddles wrapped in warnings, but one thing was clear: no one went out after dark, and many who did never returned. He handed me a note, and his gnarled fingers brushed mine with urgency. It read, "Meet at the crossroads when the clock strikes midnight. AUV." I knew the risks. In my line of work, a note like that was as likely to lead to a trap as to an ally, but my choices were few. The Elder's spawn had to be stopped, and I was the blade to cut to the heart of this infestation. So I waited, the silver amulet around my neck, a relic from a hunt that nearly claimed my life, growing cold against my skin. The church bell tolled, a mournful sound that echoed off the stone cottages. Midnight. I stepped out into the night, the darkness embracing me like an old friend, or perhaps a conspirator. At the crossroads, a figure emerged from the shadows, her eyes reflecting the dim light like those of a predator. Edge Valentine, her name as sharp as the knife she no doubt kept hidden. Her story spilled out like blood from a wound, of a family cursed, of a lineage damned by the bite of a creature that mocked the very heavens with its existence. I saw the resolve in her eyes, the same kind that's gotten me through 100 nights like this one. We were an unlikely pair, the haunted and the hunter, but our goals aligned. The inn seemed almost welcoming upon my return, a solitary haven in a village that had long given up hope. I'd need rest for the hunt to come, but sleep is a luxury rarely afforded to those who walk in my world. For tonight, the Elder would wait, lurking in the tales of old women and the prayers of men too afraid to face their demons. Tomorrow, we would strike, but for now, the only sound was the beating of my own heart, an echo of the lives I'd come to save, or a prelude to my own reckoning. The night held a stillness that was anything but peaceful. Standing at the crossroads, the coldness of the air was secondary to the chill that ran down my spine as I watched Edge Valentine approach. She moved with a grace that belied her ferocity, a walking contradiction born of ancient bloodlines and modern curses. "Grayson Hawk," she said, her voice a melodic whisper that carried the weight of centuries. "You are not what I expected of the Order's chosen hunter." "And what did you expect?" I retorted, not willing to admit her presence stirred something within me that had long lain dormant. A shadow, perhaps, she mused, a half-smile playing on her lips. Not a man. It was there, under the judgmental gaze of the moon, that she laid bare the curse of the Valentine lineage. A tale of her ancestor, ensnared by the charms of the elder vampire, damning her family to a life tethered to the beast. It was a story as old as the cobblestones we stood upon, yet every word throbbed with fresh pain. I was no stranger to the darkness of the night, but the rawness of her confession struck me. Edge was not just hunting a monster, she was hunting her family's salvation. And in that moment, our alliance was forged, not out of trust, but out of a shared hunger for an end to the nightmares that plagued us. Our plan was simple in its brutality. The Elder's spawn were many, but we would turn the numbers against them, using the labyrinth of tunnels beneath the village as our battleground. It was a death trap for the uninitiated, but we were anything but. No sooner had we set our course than the night erupted into chaos. They came at us like shadows given form, fangs gleaming in the moonlight, minions of the Elder. The fight was a ballet of violence, every thrust and parry a lethal step in a dance to the death. Edge fought with a precision that was mesmerizing, her blade a silver flash in the dark. I matched her stroke for stroke, my own weapons, an arsenal of blessed iron and holy water, laying waste to the horde that sought to overwhelm us. When the dust settled, the ground was sanctified by the ash of our enemies. We stood, backs to each other, breathing heavily in the silence that followed. It was a temporary victory, the first of many battles to come. But in that moment, there was an understanding between us, a recognition that we were two sides of the same coin, bound by blood and blade to the darkness we hunted. The night was far from over, and as we made our way back to the inn to plan our next move, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was the beginning of something more than just a hunt. This was a war, and we had just sounded the first charge. Dawn crept over the horizon like a thief, reluctantly shedding light on the horrors of the night before. The stench of sanctified ash lingered in the air, a testament to the violence that Edge and I had wrought upon the Elder's spawn. We retreated to the inn's cellar, our makeshift war room, mapping out the catacombs that writhed beneath the village like a nest of vipers. In the dim light, Edge unfurled aged parchments, the lines etched upon them a roadmap to our quarry. The lore of the Elder Vampire was a tapestry of blood and shadow, spun from the threads of countless victims who had fallen prey to its influence over the centuries. Our weapons are not just steel and faith, Grayson, Edge said, her eyes scanning the labyrinthine tunnels. We wield knowledge as a blade against the darkness. The Elder has weaknesses, just as any other creature of the night. Her words were a cold comfort. I knew that the true test of our resolve would come not from what we knew of the beast, but from what we did not. In my travels, I had amassed an arsenal to rival any army of darkness. Garlic, holy water, stakes, each a tool to puncture the heart of evil. But against such an ancient force, doubt crept into my mind like a whispering specter. We planned our assault under the guise of night, the darkness a cloak for our intentions. We slipped into the tunnels, the air stale and heavy with the scent of damp earth and decay. Our path was a twisted route through the bowels of hell, every step a descent further into the abyss. The lesser vampires were but shadows, flitting at the edge of our torchlight, their hisses a serenade of death. They came at us with a hunger born of eternal damnation, their fangs bared in a grotesque parody of life. I fought with a brutality I reserved for the foulest of hellspawn, my blade an extension of my will to purge the night. Edge was a tempest, her anger a storm that left only destruction in its wake. We did not just fight. We carved a path of retribution through the horde, our resolve unyielding. But as the corpses piled high, a chilling realization settled in my bones. This was too easy. The elder was not among its minions. We were being played, lured deeper into the darkness. "Careful, Grayson," Edge warned, her voice barely audible above the sound of dripping water. "This reeks of a trap." I could feel the walls closing in, not in body, but in spirit. The very air seemed to thicken with malice, and the oppressive silence was a shroud that threatened to suffocate our souls. In the heart of the catacombs, we found a chamber, its walls inscribed with runes that spoke of an ancient evil. At its center lay an altar, not to any god, but to something far older, something that predated the sacred texts and holy symbols we clung to. It was there that we made our stand, in the belly of the beast, waiting for the elder to reveal itself. And in the deafening silence that followed our slaughter, I heard it, a voice that was not a voice, a presence that clawed at the edges of my mind. "Grayson Hawk," it hissed, a sound like the grinding of stone on stone. The darkness laughed, and I knew the true battle was just beginning. In the suffocating darkness of the catacombs, the elder's voice slithered into my thoughts like venom. The runes on the walls pulsed with a vile light, casting shadows that danced with our fears. "Grayson," Edge's voice was tense. "Stay focused. Don't let it into your head." But it was too late. The elder's psychic tendrils had wrapped around my mind, tightening with every heartbeat. Visions of my past hunts flashed before me. Faces of the fallen, their eyes accusing, mouths agape in silent screams. The guilt I'd buried deep beneath a facade of stoic resolve now bore down on me with the weight of a tombstone. The elder's voice was a cacophony in my skull, echoing doubts I dared not voice. Was I any less monstrous than the creatures I hunted? The blood on my hands seemed as damning as that on the fangs of the undead. As I grappled with the onslaught, Edge remained a beacon, her resolve undiminished, but her steel-eyed glare hid a storm of her own. A tempest of vengeance for a family lost to darkness. "It feeds on fear, Grayson," she gritted out, her sword at the ready. "Don't give it the satisfaction." I clung to her words like a lifeline, forcing the elder's whispers to the recesses of my mind. We advanced through the chamber, every step an act of defiance against the despair that sought to engulf us. Our lights flickered as if the air itself conspired to swallow the glow, leaving us to the mercy of the unseen horror. Then, with the suddenness of a night terror, it was upon us. The elder stepped from the shadows, a towering figure of ancient malevolence. Its eyes were abysses that promised endless night, and its presence sapped the warmth from the air. Our battle was a dance with death itself, each stroke and parry a fleeting heartbeat between life and everlasting doom. The elder was a force beyond nature, its strength untamed by the centuries, its body unmarred by our desperate onslaught. Edge fought with the fury of her cursed bloodline, each strike a cry for redemption. Yet for every blow she landed, the elder's laugh, a sound like the grinding of bone, filled the chamber. Then it struck, a blow that sent Edge reeling, her sword clattering to the stone floor. The elder loomed over her, its fangs a promise of oblivion. I lunged, my blade a flash of silver in the dim light, and the creature recoiled with a snarl. But in that moment of distraction, a cold realization crept into my soul. The elder had not intended to kill us. Not yet. It sought to torment, to break us, to turn us against one another. Edge lay on the ground, her breath ragged, her eyes wild with pain and fury. I saw the trickle of blood where the elder's claw had grazed her skin, and my heart lurched. The curse, was it now her burden to bear? "Get up, Edge," I urged, my voice a rasp of desperation. "We end this, now or never." She rose, her gaze locking onto mine, a silent vow that she would not fall to the creature's dark embrace. Together, we stood against the encroaching gloom, two hunters defying the night, The elder's psychic assault intensified, a maelstrom that threatened to tear away my very soul. But amidst the chaos, a clarity settled over me. This was the moment that would define me. This was the moment that would define me. Not as a hunter, but as a man. Would I succumb to fear, or would I rise above it, a beacon against the darkness? The battle raged, and the chamber became a crucible within which our wills were tested. The elder's form shimmered with unholy vigor, but we met its savagery with a resolve forged from our shared torment. In that eternal night, where the veil between man and monster thinned to a whisper, we found our truth. And it was this truth that would lead us into the final brutal embrace of destiny. Our shadows entwined with the elder's as we encircled him, our breaths misting in the frigid air of the tomb. The scent of ancient death clung to the damp stone, a perfume for the coming bloodshed. Edge's eyes held the fury of a storm, and her hand gripped the hilt of her blade with unwavering resolve. "We end this now, Grayson," she hissed, moving with lethal grace. I nodded, my every sense sharpened to a razor's edge. The elder's form was like a wraith, shifting and elusive, its laughter a symphony of malice. We struck as one, hunters synchronized in a dance of death. Our weapons synchronized in a dance of death. Our weapons sing songs of silver. The battle was a tempest, and the elder, a dark mariner steering us into the abyss. But we were no easy prey. Every cut, every thrust we delivered was a verse in our defiant anthem against the darkness. Then, the twist of fate, the cruel joke of the macabre. But in its final spiteful act, the elder raked its talon across Edge's arm, the sound of rending flesh, a vile punctuation to its demise. She staggered, her face a canvas of shock and rage, the poison of the elder's lineage seeping into her veins. No, the word tore from my throat, raw and ragged. Edge collapsed, her breath coming in ragged gasps, the color draining from her face. I was at her side in an instant, my hands pressing against the wound, my mind racing. "Grayson," she whispered, her voice a shadow of its former fire. "I can feel it. The weight of our journey, of every life I had taken, every curse I had faced, bore down on me with crushing force. Here was my comrade, my fierce ally, on the brink of the abyss I had sworn to destroy. The order had been clear. There could be no mercy, no hesitation. The tainted must be dealt with swiftly, lest the darkness spread. But as I looked into Edge's eyes, I saw not the monster she feared to become, but the human she still was. Her spirit, unbroken, her will, a blazing defiance against the night. "Grayson, do what you must," she said, a tremor in her voice. The silence that followed was a void, stretching between the should and the could, between duty and humanity. I drew my blade, a blade that had felled countless nightmares. My hand shook as I raised it, not with fear, but with the burden of the choice before me. In the hush that fell over the crypt, I made my decision. I would defy the order, defy the very creed I had lived by. I would find a cure, a salvation for the cursed, for Edge, for the humanity I still believed dwelled within us all. I lowered my weapon, my voice a steadfast whisper in the darkness. Edge's hand gripped mine, her determination a beacon in the encroaching shadow. Our fate was now as one, hunters bound by blood and purpose, stepping into a future unwritten, where hope still held sway. And in that moment, as the first light of dawn crept into the tomb, we faced the unknown, two souls against the world, our resolve unyielding. The story of Grayson Hawk and Edge Valentine was far from over. It was a tale that would be etched in blood and shadow, a legend that would whisper through the ages of a fight not just for life, but for the very essence of our humanity. July 23, morning. I sit here under the early morning sky, the Sahara stretching endlessly around us. Our group, a band of explorers led by me, Alex, is ready for another day of trekking. The sun is just beginning to climb, and there's a sense of anticipation in the air. Sarah, with her bright red hair tied back and eyes full of excitement, checks her camera, eager to capture whatever this day holds. Mark, ever the pragmatist, meticulously adjusts his gear, his face shaded by a wide-brimmed hat, a stark contrast to Sarah's open enthusiasm. July 23, midday. The sun is at its zenith now, merciless in its intensity. We've been walking for hours, and the endless dunes seem to merge into the horizon. Then, like a vision, we see it, an oasis. It's surreal, a patch of vibrant green against the stark sands. Sarah is the first to laugh in disbelief, her eyes sparkling, while Mark squints, suspicious of this too. Good, true mirage. Are we seeing a mirage? Sarah asks, her voice tinged with wonder. Mark doesn't answer, his brows furrowed in suspicion as he surveys the scene. July 23 afternoon. We've reached the oasis. It's real and even more magnificent up close. Palm trees, lush vegetation, and a pool of clear water. It's like stepping into another world. We all relax, basking in the shade and cool water. Sarah splashes around, her laughter echoing, while Mark remains on the edge, dipping his toes cautiously. But despite the beauty, I can't shake off a feeling of unease, as if we're not alone. This place, it's almost too perfect, I murmur, scanning the dense foliage. July 23, evening. The camp is set, and the oasis takes on a different character under the setting sun. Shadows lengthen, and the air grows cooler. As Emily spins tales of ancient legends, her voice a soft, captivating lilt, I notice how the oasis seems to listen, almost knowingly. The feeling of being watched grows stronger. Do you ever wonder if places like this are haunted? Emily asks, her dark eyes glinting in the firelight. Sarah shivers playfully, while Mark scoffs, yet his discomfort is palpable. July 23, night. Lying in my tent, the sounds of the night envelop me. The gentle rustling of the trees, the soft whispers of the wind, they all seem to carry a hidden message. This oasis, a haven in the midst of desolation, feels alive, aware of our presence. It's both fascinating and unsettling. What secrets does it hold? My thoughts drift to the stories Emily told, to the legends of spirits and curses. Sleep comes uneasily, the oasis's unseen eyes seeming to watch over us. July 24, late afternoon. The sun's descent casts a golden hue over the oasis, transforming the landscape into a scene from a fable. As we wander, a hidden path reveals itself, leading us to a grand structure nestled in the heart of this paradise. A palace, an architectural marvel, blending ancient grandeur with modern mystique, rises before us. Its towering gates, adorned with intricate carvings, silently invite us in. Sarah's eyes widen in awe, her camera clicking incessantly. Mark, usually unflappable, lets out a low whistle, his curiosity piqued despite his earlier skepticism. July 24, early evening. Our entrance into the palace is greeted by a woman whose presence commands the room. She introduces herself as Queen Laila, ruler of the oasis. Her beauty is ethereal, her gaze piercing, as if she's lived 1,000 lifetimes. "Welcome to my oasis," she says, her voice lilting, almost hypnotic. We are captivated, drawn in by her otherworldly charm. July 24, dinner time. The dining hall is a vision of opulence, bathed in the warm glow of torches and adorned with exotic tapestries that tell tales of ancient times. The table is laden with dishes that seem to have come from every corner of the world, each more enticing than the last. As we dine, Queen Laila regales us with stories of the oasis, her words weaving a tapestry of history and mystery. Sarah listens, enraptured, while Mark's expression softens, his earlier reservations seemingly forgotten. July 24, late evening. But as the evening unfolds, a subtle shift occurs. Sarah's laughter, once genuine, now rings hollow, her glances towards Queen Laila tinged with unease. Mark, who prides himself on his skepticism, seems distant, his gaze unfocused, as if he's in a trance. I can't help but notice the strange aftertaste of the food, questioning the nature of the products we are consuming. Is everything all right? I ask Sarah, but she dismisses my concern with a strained smile. July 24, night. The night deepens, and the palace takes on a sinister air. Shadows twist and turn in impossible ways, and the atmosphere is charged with an electric, unseen energy. Queen Laila's demeanor becomes more enigmatic, her smiles now laced with a dark promise. A sense of foreboding washes over me. What is this place? I murmur to myself, a chill running down my spine. The evening's strange events are just the beginning, and I can't shake the feeling that we're caught in a web far more complex and sinister than we could have imagined. July 25, early morning. Restless and unable to sleep, I rise from my bed, the eerie events of the previous night haunting my thoughts, the peculiar change in my friends, the odd behavior of Queen Laila, the strange aftertaste of our meal. It all swirls in my head, forming a knot of dread. The darkness of the room feels suffocating, and I step out into the cooler, yet somehow more oppressive, corridors of the palace. July 25, late morning. Driven by a need for answers, I wander the palace. Its corridors, opulent and adorned with relics of a bygone era, are eerily silent. The grandeur around me does little to ease the growing unease. In a secluded corner of the palace, I discover an ancient library. Its shelves are laden with dusty tomes, their pages yellowed with time. My fingers trace the spines, feeling the weight of history within them. July 25 afternoon. Immersed in the ancient texts, I uncover a horrifying truth. Queen Laila, a figure of mesmerizing beauty and dark power, is a vampire. Centuries old, she sustains herself by ensnaring travelers, feeding on their life force. A curse binds her to this oasis, a curse that compels her to feast upon the souls who wander into her domain. July 25, early evening. As I absorb this chilling revelation, I encounter Sarah and Mark in the dimly lit hallway. Their appearances are altered. Their eyes, once warm and familiar, now hold a predatory coldness. They move with a grace that is unnervingly unnatural. Sarah, Mark, what's happened to you? I ask, my voice barely a whisper. They don't respond, only staring with those unsettling, inhuman eyes. A wave of sorrow washes over me as I realize the grim truth. They are no longer the friends I knew, but creatures of the curse. July 25, night. I find Queen Laila in her ornate chamber, her presence radiating a chilling elegance. What have you done to my friends? I demand, my voice echoing in the vast room. She regards me with a cold amusement, a predator playing with her prey. You cannot leave, Alex, she says, her voice a serpentine hiss. The curse binds all who enter here. It's then that the full magnitude of our plight hits me. The only way to save ourselves is to break the curse. But how? The answer lies hidden somewhere within the depths of this cursed paradise. July 26, pre-dawn. The darkness before dawn envelops the palace, a tangible presence that heightens my senses. My friends, now mere vessels of the curse, wander the halls, their movements eerie and disjointed. I steel myself, knowing I must confront Queen Laila to break this malevolent spell. July 26, early morning. I arm myself with a heavy candlestick and a shard of mirror, makeshift weapons against an immortal foe. My heart pounds as I navigate the silent, oppressive corridors. The haunting echoes of my friends, a constant reminder of what's at stake. Determination fuels my steps as I head towards Laila's lair. July 26, mid-morning. Confronting Queen Laila is like facing death itself. Her power is immense, her form blurring between beauty and monstrosity. We clash in the grand hall, her strength almost overwhelming. I use my wits, dodging and weaving. The shard of mirror a feeble defense against her supernatural might. The palace trembles with our struggle, dust falling from the ancient walls. July 26, noon. In the heat of battle, I stumble upon a hidden chamber, its walls lined with ancient lore. Here, I uncover the origin of the curse, a tragic tale of love betrayed, a heartbroken queen who succumbed to darkness. Understanding floods in. Laila's curse is anchored in her own pain and loss. July 26, afternoon. With this revelation, I confront Laila once more, not with weapons, but with words. Your pain has lasted centuries, Laila. Isn't it time to let go? I implore. She hesitates, the ferocity in her eyes flickering with doubt. Around us, the controlled movements of my friends falter, as if my words are reaching them, stirring remnants of their humanity. July 26, late afternoon. The climax of our battle is more than physical. It's a clash of wills. Release yourself from this pain, I urge. Laila's resistance wavers, her expression softening. A tear slips down her cheek, and with it, the curse begins to unravel. The palace shakes, a sign of the oasis's impending collapse. My friends, their eyes clearing, look around in confusion and relief as they come back to themselves. July 27, dawn. The first light of dawn reveals a scene of chaos. The oasis, once a symbol of life amidst the desert, now crumbles before our eyes. As its enchantment fades, the palace disintegrates into nothing but dust and echoes. I lead my friends, the survivors, away from the destruction. The ground beneath us trembles, mirroring the turmoil within me. July 27, early morning. We navigate through the disintegrating oasis, its beauty now a haunting memory. The lush greenery withers into ash, succumbing to the harsh reality of the desert. Queen Laila, her strength diminished, watches us with a mix of defeat and resignation. The air around us is thick with the sense of an ending, the final act of a tragic play. July 27, mid-morning. As we leave the bounds of the oasis, a sharp, searing pain courses through my body. It feels as if fire is running through my veins, consuming me from within. The realization hits me like a thunderbolt. I have been transformed into a vampire, a cruel twist of fate, and Laila's last act of revenge. My friends' gasps of horror mirror my own shock. July 27, noon. We find ourselves in the barren expanse of the Sahara once again. The oasis, a distant dream now, fades into the horizon. My friends, the few who survived, are quiet, each lost in their grief and shock. The burden of our ordeal, the loss we've suffered, and my unsettling transformation weighs heavily upon us all. July 27 afternoon. In the relative safety of our makeshift camp, the stark reality of my new existence begins to dawn on me. My senses are unnaturally sharp, every sound amplified, every scent potent. The sun, once a comforting presence, now feels abrasive, its rays an unwelcome reminder of what I've become. My friends glance at me with a mixture of fear and pity, unsure of how to interact with the person I've now become. July 27, sunset. As the sun sets, painting the sky with fiery hues, I find myself isolated from the group, lost in contemplation. The transformation has changed me in ways I'm still trying to comprehend. The journey, which began as an adventure, has morphed into a personal nightmare. I am now the embodiment of the very horror we sought to escape.